Hello friends, welcome to Coding Garden with CJ. Welcome to development setup. So in this episode, I have a fresh install of macOS High Sierra, and I'm going to be setting up my machine. So if you're watching live, you can ask questions about what I'm doing, and I'll pretty much try to explain all the things I'm installing and why I'm installing them while I do it. But yeah, let's get into it. So I'll share these links soon. I'll probably put them in the chat. I'll put them in the description so you can see. But the main thing is, first I'm going to set up Homebrew and Terminal and Bash, which is what I use. But I'll also show you like Oh My Zish. A lot of people like to use that. I'll then show you what I use for productivity, so like window management and my quick launcher. I'll show you some of the few settings that I use to customize OSX. I'll install a web browser and then talk about all the extensions I use in the web browser for development. I'll install Node using Node Version Manager, VS Code, and then all of my extensions. Hopefully I can get to all of this tonight. If not, I'll probably finish this up tomorrow night. But hello everyone, welcome. Merchan, hello. Finally tuning in for a live stream. James Ross, it's been a very long time. Welcome. Hello. Yes. So yeah, and James is mentioning it reminds him of when he had to set up his MacBook for a boot camp. If you're a boot camp person, this video is for you. This is typically what you have to do like when you're starting a boot camp. Okay, so I am going to be using Homebrew to install a lot of these things. So actually, let me go ahead and share this link in the chat. This is just like an overview. Oh, I can't. And then I'm not logged in. Oh well. I'll show you what you can do. If you go to gist.github.com and then in the search bar do user w3cj and then put the word setup, you should find all the files that I'm using. So there's dev setup, OSX development setup, and then some other things in there, but you should be able to find these files. And at the end of this, I will link them in the description. But first thing is, I need to install Homebrew. But before I do that, I need to install the OSX development tools. So there's this command, XCode select, that installs like just really basic tools that will allow all of these other things to work. So for that, I'm going to use Terminal. Look at that, a brand new fresh terminal. And I'm just going to run this command, XCode select install. This should prompt, requires the command line developer tools, install. So this installs like basic tools without having to install Xcode, and I'll let that run. I think my internet's gonna be pretty fast. A lot of this is just gonna be watching progress bars as I install things. And also, like I said, if at any time you have a question about things that I'm installing or why I'm using the things I'm using, feel free to ask. While that's installing, let's talk about Homebrew. So you probably have seen this before, but this is, I think it's called the missing package manager for macOS. If you're familiar with like a Linux or Unix environment, pretty much every Linux operating system or distribution has a package manager. So for Debian, it's apt-get. For Arch, I believe it's Pacman. For Fedora, is it Yum? But basically there's a built-in package manager for installing things, and OSX doesn't really have one of those. So Homebrew is a tool that you can install that lets you install various packages. And so I'm going to install this so that I can install other things. And I don't think I can use Homebrew until I've installed this thing here. Hey Christian, welcome. James is asking, how's New York? Exhausting. Work is busy, the trains are busy, my commute is busy. It's pretty tiring, but it's fun. It's cool to ride the subway every day. Cool, Shedrick, I'll see you later. 6 minutes, oh, okay, so this episode is probably gonna be a lot of just watching progress bars. I think my internet is like decently fast. It could be that this is also like installing things, so that takes a little bit of time. I might actually do like an edited, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say I might do an edited version of this so people in the future can like have a playlist of how to set up a Mac but you could just fast forward, click through the video. I'll definitely post timestamps after this video is up so you can go to different times to see when I install various things. Progress quest. Is that a thing, or is that just like a joke about the fact that we're... Oh, okay. Instead of noob quest, it's just watching progress bars. I think that's the joke you're making. Cool. I guess while that's happening, let's explore. So this is macOS High Sierra. And I can talk about one of the reasons I did reinstall my operating system was I had Mac installed on a case-sensitive file system, which most Linux systems are, where it cares about and it matters whether things are uppercase, whether file names are uppercase or lowercase. And so I had that, but there are various applications that won't work on a Mac if your system is case sensitive. Mostly games. So like Steam stopped working on Mac because my file system was case sensitive. So I basically wiped my computer so that I can install Steam and Fortnite and Adobe Illustrator and Google SketchUp. They're like various apps, probably because they were like developed cross-platform and like some of it works on Windows. They need to be on a system that is not case sensitive. Yeah, so one of the major reasons that I wiped and reloaded my machine, and actually I hadn't tried out High Sierra just yet. I had been on Sierra for a very long time, so starting from scratch. Oh, Christian says Progress Quest is a real thing. Let's look it up. An antic and fantastical computer role-playing game. Wait. Is there a... Okay, I thought so it's a game that was for Windows 93. Are there any screenshots? Let's look at images. It's like progress bars. That's great. Awesome. Okay, so this is done. That's awesome. So we have installed Xcode select. So the next thing is to install Brew. So I copied this command here, but if you go to brew.sh, you can grab the command that you need to copy to install Homebrew. So I'm going to grab this. And let's test the internet. So this is setting up basically directories on my machine so that it can manage software. Let's do it. What is my password? Cool. Play the music. Well, I don't have headphones, and then it would only come through the stream, so I don't know what the quality would be. So, also, I don't want a copyright strike. So. That was great. All right, so now that we have Homebrew, we can use Homebrew to install the other things that we need. So first thing is, I think I do brew update. I might have already done that. Yeah, so it says up to date. Cool. Then I want to install iTerm2. So this terminal that I'm using is just like the built-in terminal on the Mac. iTerm2 is a custom terminal that has lots of cool features and lots more ways to customize it, so I like to use it. You could just download it from the website, but Homebrew is a package manager, so you can actually install it. And I actually just learned about this yesterday when I was researching like automating this kind of stuff. Brew also has a thing called Cask, and casks are actual Mac applications. So there's a cask for like Google Chrome, for FireFox, Soectacle, Visual Studio Code, so you can actually run a command line command that will install that application. Because if you're familiar with OSX, typically you have to like download it and then drag it to the applications folder. This brew install automates all of that. So I'm going to brew cask install iTerm2, and it would basically be the same as clicking download, then dragging opening the DMG, and then dragging the app to my applications folder, but it's going to be all in one go. So let's do it. iTerm2, please. How many times am I going to have to enter my password? We'll set permissions properly so you won't need sudo in the future. Okay, so I think this is going to be the only time I have to install it. Awesome, and you'll see that it actually put the app file in applications. So if I open up iTerm, hey, now I got this terminal. So I'm going to start using this instead of the built-in terminal. And then I believe I can say, is there a way to dock it? Like if I quit it and then open applications, let's like dock it permanently just for now. I'm going to show later that I actually don't like the dock on the Mac and I just like hide it completely. Check for updates. Yes, please. Okay, cool. So now we have iTerm 2. Let's customize it a little bit. So if you go into, I believe, profiles and then edit profiles, I'll show you some of the settings I prefer for iTerm 2. First thing is working directory. Set this to reuse previous sessions directory. So if you've ever seen me coding, whenever I open a new tab in terminal, it's always the same folder that I was in the previous tab. And this one setting right there does that. So that's great. Let's go to font. I like to have a default font that's like really big, especially because I give presentations a lot and like I present on the internet. So let's make it like 24. Colors, I like to do, just keep it as dark background, and I just like my foreground to be like a very, very greenish color, like this green. Actually, FF00, like lime, pure lime green. Cool. And, oh yeah, keys. So one thing you want to do in keys is go to load preset and say natural text editing. I'll show why we do that real quick. So let's say I just do like ls-l. A common keyboard shortcut on the Mac is to hold down Alt and press the arrow key, and that will like jump over characters. But you'll notice when I do Alt arrow keys, it's like putting these random characters in the terminal. But if I change the text mode to natural text editing, now I can jump over things. So simple little fix. Yeah, I think it's great. So that saves automatically. If I just close iTerm, now when I open iTerm, I should have a nice big font size. Very cool. The other thing is I don't have it on my list, but I like a font called Anonymous Pro. This one. And so I actually set this as the font in my text editor and in my terminal. So I'm going to download this and install it, then set it as my default font in the terminal. So Anonymous Pro. Oh, hey Alka, welcome to the stream. Install that, install the italics, install the bold, and install, oh wait, that was bold italics, and install bold. Great, so now that I have Anonymous Pro back in my profile, I'm gonna set that as my default font. So text, oh wait, change font, family, Anonymous Pro. Nice, cool. I think, can we set the default window size? Yeah, I like it to be a little bit flatter. Let's do like 60 rows, and yeah, let's see what this looks like. No, less than that. Like 30. Wait. Whoa, okay, that's the wrong thing. I'm going in reverse. Oh, that's columns, okay. So I want these to be like 10, and like this was good at like 60. Decent. Actually, does it remember the window size? Like if I do that and then open a new one, no, it doesn't. Okay, let's get this right. So if this is 10 by 60, where are we at? It's really hard to see actually. Let's go like 80 columns and like 30 rows. Less rows than that, 20 rows. Yes, that's what I like. Okay, it's a decent size. Yeah, that's it mainly for my my settings. Hello, Isan, welcome to the stream. And Alicia, hello. Someone is asking my age. I'll tell you that I've been programming for like close to 15 years. Professionally, probably like 10-ish years. Okay, so terminal is ready to go. Now, I'm going to set up the latest version of Bash. So built into the Mac when you, built in is, I think, Bash version 3.2. And that's not the latest version of Bash. I think they're like on version 4. So we can actually use Homebrew to install the latest version of Bash. Let's exit out of this. I will mention real quick, there also is Zish shell, which a lot of web developers like to use. And then there's this package called ohmyzish, which automatically installs themes and extensions and things like autocomplete and lots of cool stuff. So if you're into that, you can use something like this. It's pretty easy to install, but I prefer to stay on Bash. So I'm going to install the latest version of Bash. So I'm going to do brew install bash. Hey Ran, welcome to the stream. This is great. I'm really glad that these things are installing really fast. Cool. So I have the latest version of Bash, but by default, it is not my default shell. So I don't know how I would even do this, because if I do bash-v, okay, so that's actually just loading bash. So that is version 3.2. But if I open a new tab, 4.4. And that's what I want, but by default, it's putting me in the old one. So I want to change my shell to be this new bash that Brew installed. I keep trying to do that. So if I do which bash, you can see that Brew installs things in user local bin. So I'm going to change my shell to be this bash. What's the equivalent of Homebrew on Windows? Actually, no, so pip is for Python. There's a thing called Chocolatey. Chocolatey? I only used it a little bit. Let's see. The package manager for Windows. Hey, I remembered something. Okay, yeah, it's called Choco. Very similar. And I believe this uses, what is it, PowerShell, something like that. But yeah, check out Choco. Oh, Merrick Sean is saying he's actually stuck in PowerShell right now. Cool. That's Chocolatey. Where were we? Okay, we want to set our default shell. I don't have this memorized, so I'm just going to Google it. I'll say OSX set default shell. Changing the shell. Actually, one thing I Googled earlier was OSX set, OSX install latest bash. I found a decent article. Yeah, upgrade to bash 4 and Mac OS X. Brew install bash. Okay, configure the terminal to use it. First thing is we need to add user local bin bash to our shells file. So I'm actually going to edit this. Let's do sudo nano etc/shells. So this is a file that stores all of the shells that you can use. I'm actually just going to comment out all of them and just tell them to use the version installed by Homebrew. And yes, I just used nano. That's you. I don't feel like going into Vim right now. Okay, so save that file. So now it only knows about the bash that was installed by Brew. And now we can run this command. chsh stands for change shell, and it sets my default shell. Okay, so changing password for CJ. Great. So now, by default, well, it's running version 4.4. And actually, I think this article told us, yeah, echo bash version. This will tell you what version bash is. Sweet. So we're on the latest version of bash. That makes me happy. Okay. Cool. Now, you may have seen when I use the terminal, I have random quotes that pop up. And there's the Linux penguin that's like saying those things. So the random quotes are coming from this package called Fortune. So let's just look it up real quick. Linux Fortune. This is like a really old program for Unix. A program that displays a pseudorandom message from a database of quotations that first appeared in version 7 of Unix. So we can get it on the Mac by doing brew install Fortune. And it just gives you random quotes and fortunes throughout the day when you open a new terminal. So we have fortune, that's great. And actually, if I just type fortune, we get a random quote. A beautiful woman is a blessing from heaven, but a good cigar is a smoke. Okay? Another one. Adam was but human. This explains it all. He did not want the apple for the apple's sake. He wanted it only because it was forbidden. The mistake was in not forbidding the serpent. Then he would have eaten the serpent. Okay. Mark Twain quote. Oh yeah, and Merritt Chan mentioned change shell, CHSH. And so this is one of the reasons I really like web development on the Mac, is because it's basically a Unix machine. It's based on FreeBSD, so like all of your Linux knowledge can be used here, but you also get access to all things that are easy to use like on a Mac. And by that I mean like, I don't know, things are seamless. I don't want to get into a debate about like Linux versus Mac or whatever, but it's pretty much why I prefer it, because it's like the best of both worlds. But if you wanted to know what CHSH does, you can use the man page, CHSH. Add or change user database information. The CHFN and CHSH utilities behave identically to CHPass. Cool. Maybe it doesn't stand for change shell, but that's what we use it for. Cool. So now I have fortune. Let's also get Cowsay. So Cowsay is a way of, I'll show you. So let's install Cowsay. And hey, Daniel, welcome to the stream. We could do, I think you can do Cowsay hello. Yes, and you get a cow that says hello. But there are various cow files of other characters. So you've seen I use the Linux penguin. Let's also look up Cowsay. And of course, these are essential to web development on the Mac. That's why we're covering them. Yeah, so there's the Linux penguin. There's that thing. There's various cow files that are pre-installed. And if you look hard enough, there's like a repo out there where someone made cow files of like Pokemon. So cool. But now the combination of Cowsay and Fortune, and this is like classic Linux, like using multiple commands. So if we pipe Fortune into Cowsay, you now have a cow that will say a random quote. So part of my bash profile is to show this every time a terminal opens, and then I tell it to use the Linux cow file. Okay, we're also going to install the latest version of Git. I think, do we have Git? Git -- version. Yeah, so we have version 2.15. But that's the one that comes default with the Mac. If we do brew install git, that's going to give us the latest version, which I'm not sure what that is. 2.18. Cool. So I believe once you install something, you like instantly have access to it. So like git -- version. Wait, I think I have to open a new tab. Git -- version 2.18. Cool. So now we're on the latest version of Git. That's great. And then there's this command called vcprompt. If you've just installed OhMyZish, you're like used to this. But if you're ever inside of a folder that is a Git repo, this will show you the branch that you're on in that folder. It's really convenient because it's easy to tell like if the current folder that you're in is actually a Git repo. So I'm going to install vcprompt, and then I'll show you how I use it all by showing you my bash profile. Cool. So we've got vcprompt, and now I'm going to update my bash profile. So on my GitHub, I have my .files repo. And in there, I have my bash profile. So my bash profile is all of my settings that I like in bash. I set my host name. In a bit, we're going to install NVM, and so I typically will load NVM and then use the latest version of Node. If you're familiar with OhMyZish, I think it sets this setting for you, but typically you can change into a directory by just typing the directory name, so like music, and then that would actually CD into it. Well, that's just a setting called auto CD, and I enable it in bash. And then I believe histappend will append the history as commands get entered, because typically if you type a command in this shell and then you open a new tab, it's not saving your history from both. It's like only saving it like when you close the tab, But this, no matter what tab is open, it's saving all of your history to the history file. I then have a bin folder in my home directory, typically, where I'll put executable things. And this adds it to my path so I can put things in there and run them. And then I make my history like really giant. So I make it so if you're not familiar, the history command will show you all of the commands that you've run. But this makes it so that it saves, I think at least the last 5,000 commands. I think by default it doesn't save that much. So I set that up to save lots of history. And then this, which you're probably familiar with if you installed Zish, allows you to search your history by typing a few letters. So if I type like git and then start pressing up, it'll search through my history and show me commands that I've typed before that started with git. And so those two settings enable backward and forward searching. I then have some terminal colors set up. These are my random emojis that you see popping up in my terminal. So I have a little bash function here that grabs a random emoji. And then this is so right now this thing is like super basic, right? It's it just says the name of my Mac and my name. This is custom code that will show like the current working directory. It'll show the emoji. If you've seen my stream before, you've seen what it looks like. And so basically, because this is in my bash profile, it always runs. And then I pipe Fortune into Cowsay using the tux cow file. So let me just run this command. You'll see now it does tux. So that's how I get that working. I have just this random function, mkcd. It will make a directory and cd into it all in one go. And then I have various aliases. A beer emoji will check out a branch called drunk. I have various git aliases added in here too. So here's what I gotta do. I just grab the contents of this bash file, and then we'll put it into a file that's in my home directory called bash file. So let's use nano. Like I said, unapologetically using nano. I'm not gonna use vim. Convert tabs. You're about to paste a string with tabs. Tab size and spaces. 2. Paste with tabs. Great. Save that file. Okay, now that this bash profile exists in my home directory, every time I open a new terminal, it automatically runs that. So prepare yourself. Open a new tab, boom, you get the classic CJ prompt with the emoji, the name, the current working directory. So like if we go into a folder, you see the current working directory there. And then I have that code in there that every time I open a new terminal, I get a random emoji. Cool. Right now I'm getting NVM not found because we haven't installed it, but that's a little look into how this whole thing works. Cool. Okay, so that's it for like customizing the terminal, installing all those basic commands. Oh yeah, Merritt Sean is saying, so for the longest time I used Atom, and so I had the letter A aliased to Atom space dot. So in any directory I could type A, and it would open Atom in that directory. But now, since I started using VS Code, I'm laughing at the chat. I changed A to be code. So if I type the letter A, it'll open up code. And Amal is mentioning I was using Nano right when he tuned in. Actually, were you on that stream when I decided to set up Vim for the first time? Maybe that was someone else. But yeah, that's it for any of the terminal editing that I'm going to do today. So I just used Nano for a bit. I could use VI though. You want to see me? Watch me. Vim bash profile. Cool. So what should we edit? Let's add a new emoji to the emoji array. Okay, so I'm on this line and I want to start typing text. So I press I to go into insert mode. Now I can put an emoji in. What emoji should I add? Let's do the alien emoji. Awesome. Now to get out of insert mode, press escape. To save the file, go into command mode. I want to write and then quit, please. Cool. And now eventually we should get an alien. There he is. Okay. So that's it for terminal setup. Now I'm going to get into productivity, so window management and a quick launcher. So I use Soectacle for window management. I believe it's at soectacleapp.com, but I'm going to show you how to install it with Brew. But basically, this is how I quickly resize and move windows around on my machine. So you typically see me do like half code, half terminal, half browser, half a code. With this program, I can use keyboard shortcuts to do that with my windows. So I'm going to install this with Brew Cask. Oh, cool. Amal is mentioning he basically has a command for whenever you cd into a directory, it'll automatically use NVM to choose the appropriate node based on the project, which is pretty cool. Okay, so this just installed Soectacle, but it requires a little bit of setup. So the first time you launch Soectacle, it's going to ask you to set up preferences, and basically you have to give it the privileges to move your windows around. I can't type. It wouldn't let me put my keyboard. Unlock. What the heck? You know what? It could be because my screen is plugged into HDMI. Let me unplug this just for a second. Right back. I mean, I'll still be here. What the heck? I can't even type. Why? Accessibility. Wait, no. Okay. Weird. Just a second. Okay, cool. So for whatever reason, it wasn't letting me type. Oh gosh, okay, it's back to normal. But once you've unlocked it, you just need to put a check next to Soectacle to allow it to control your computer. And then I'm just gonna make sure that in Soectacle preferences, launch Soectacle at login because I use it all the time. Now, watch me. Left side of the screen, right side of the screen, up, down. So on Soectacle, it shows you all the different keyboard shortcuts, but I can go full screen, I can do top left and then center. So I love Soectacle for moving windows around. There's a few other apps out there that you can use, but Soectacle is free and I like it and I have all the keyboard shortcuts memorized. Alka says, that's quite the privilege, moving windows around. I mean, honestly, like it is though, right? It's like, it literally is telling the operating system to move the window. Cool. So that's what I use for window management. Next is Alfred. So built into the Mac is Spotlight, which is great. Command space brings it up, and then you can search for apps, you can search the web, etc. But there's an app called Alfred app that I like to use. Actually, I purchased the full version. It's a launcher, but it has workflows that you can install for doing cool things like searching for emojis. I can set it up with my preferred internet search provider. So like I could type something in, and if it's not found on my computer, it'll automatically open a browser and search DuckDuckGo. There's lots of other cool workflows that you can install. So I'm going to install that, but again, I am going to use Brew Cask. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but the cool thing about Brew Cask is it makes it really easy to uninstall apps too. If you've ever installed an app on a Mac before, you've seen that like there is no way to uninstall it. You like delete it from the applications folder, but that leaves behind files that you'd have to delete manually. There are application removers, but Cask includes all of it, everything it needs to know to uninstall an app after you've installed it too. Okay, so we installed Alfred. Let's start it up. Alfred would like access to your contacts. No, thank you. Okay, by default, Alfred launches with alt space, hello world, and we can like search Google for hello world, great. But I like to override command space so that it launches Alfred instead of Spotlight. So let's do that. If we go into System Preferences, and then Keyboard, and then Shortcuts, and then Spotlight, we can turn off command space for Show Spotlight. And then now in Alfred, we can make it command space. And now when I do command space, we see Alfred. Great. And just real quick, let's set up Alfred OSX Dark. Look at that. Cool. And so this is an application launcher, so I could launch Safari, etc. You can also go into settings. One thing I like to do a lot is like when I walk away from my computer, for security purposes, I sleep it. So this is a nice little accessible sleep from the window here. You can also like shut it down from here. You can set up what directories you want it to search. It has a built-in calculator. It has a clipboard manager, 1Password integration, all kinds of really cool stuff. And then you can actually, if you have the Power Pack, you can install workflows from the site. And there's all kinds of workflows for all kinds of things. Cool. Is this not the latest version? Yeah, I am using the latest version. Cool. So we got that set up. Now, OSX settings for dock and Finder. Oh, interesting. Amal just mentioned brew bundle dump. It gives you your brew file with all of your brewed files, casks, and regular views for term commands. So is this all of your installed things? Let me see. Dump? How do I run it? It gives me a brew file. I'm going to Google this because I kind of don't know what you're talking about. Brew bundle. Oh, is this specifically for working with like a Ruby app? Oh, I see. You can put all of your preferred brew packages in the brew file, and then it'll just automatically install them. But where did it create a brew file here in this directory? Oh, it did. So let's use Vim to open it up, only because Amal is watching. Otherwise, I would have used Nano. But cool. So all of the things that I've installed today are in here. That's awesome. So one thing I could do is if I ever decide to wipe my computer again, just grab this file, and it'll automatically install all of these things for me. Fantastic. I do like to, right now I like installing them manually because I can talk about what each thing does, but this would be a super quick way to just install everything in one go. Awesome. Okay, next thing was OSX settings. So one thing is I like to just hide my dock entirely. So one thing I'll do is actually just remove all of these icons from the dock. Just takes up space. Oh wait, I think you guys can hear my audio, can't you? Let me turn it down. Cool. So I just remove, well, is this open right now? Oh yeah, don't forget to install break timer and Flux because I use those. Let me add that to this document. I left a note for myself. Cool, but yeah, I like to just get rid of everything in the dock. That way only open applications actually show up in the dock. And then I automatically hide the dock and like make it tiny. Because the thing is, I can use keyboard shortcuts to switch between applications, to launch applications, so I don't actually need them to be in Finder. So for instance, I want to open iTerm, command space, iTerm, boom, I've got a terminal. I don't need to like click it in the dock. So if you go into system preferences and then dock, I like to make it super tiny, put it on the right, and then automatically hide it. So that way it's there if you need it, but I don't ever need it because I use keyboard shortcuts. And then switching between applications is command tab. Oh, sorry, yeah, command tab. Oh, that also reminds me. Let me also install Hyperswitch. Actually, I'll install that now because this has to do with window management and quick launcher. Curious, is Hyperswitch on Brew? I can do Brew search Hyperswitch. It is, cool. Let me show you their website to show what it does. But basically, it gives you window switching, but with thumbnail previews. So by default on the Mac, you just see the application icon. Hyperswitch will actually show you a preview of the window. So let's install it with Brew. Brew, cask, install Hyperswitch. Oh, and Mike mentions, hey, I like this topic. Nice. Cool, so I have Hyperswitch. Let's launch it. We have to give it accessibility features. So there's that. Enable. Oh, wait. System preferences. Same thing that we did with Soectacle earlier. Alka's mentioning so many of these things are on Windows already. Are they though? But are they as good as these apps that I'm installing? Okay, so now that Hyperswitch has access, continue. This is the, well, what license is this? Is it a custom license? I accept. Cool. I actually like to override the built-in one. So right now you can make it option tab. Let's see. Cool. Did it start up though? Nice. So, wait. What's happening? Hyperswitch, preferences. Run Hyperswitch in the background. I want it to show in the bar up here. Show Hyperswitch in the menu bar. Cool. There we go. So Alt-Tab will now show me the window previews. And I don't want to see the app icons. I just want to see the window, just the thumbnails. Cool. And then the other thing is I like to make this command tab, so that way by default when I'm command tabbing it does Hyperswitch instead. And then I'll make this option tab. And so then option tab switches between the windows of a given application. So if I have like multiple Safari windows open, Alt tab is between those windows, and then command tab is between all of my windows. And I disabled icons, but for whatever reason, because these apps were already open, they're still there. That's fine. It'll go away eventually. Cool. Where was I? Oh yeah, Finder settings. So I disabled the dock. The next thing I like to do is in Finder. For one, I like to add some of my favorites over here. So if you do Command-Shift-H, that takes you home. And I just like to put my downloads in here, and like my documents, my music, my pictures, just to make them super accessible. And then while we're here, I'll go ahead and create my dev folder. So everything all the code that I write typically goes in this folder, and then I like to put a shortcut to it there as well. And then just get rid of these other things. I don't like AirDrop. I hate recents. I don't like iCloud. We'll keep applications there, and then like desktop can be there too. Let's hide shared things, hide our tags. Great. I guess last thing is if I go to Go Computer, I could put my entire hard drive there too, which I like to do sometimes, just to go to the root. And then also I'll put my actual home folder there. Great. So I've got my home folder, my full hard drive, my desktop, my downloads, my documents, my pictures, and then my development. Let's put that like up there. Cool. So that is dock and Finder settings. Window moving, preview, and switching. That's true. That is built into Windows. Oh, Eric says, thanks for the effort, but mostly for the time you put on the streams. Love your newbie series. Appreciate it. This is pretty much a newbie video. If you're totally new to development, you could follow this and install all the things that I use. Awesome. Next thing is a web browser. So I've thought about this, and I think I'm gonna start using Firefox. Today is the day. Like, I used Firefox for a long time back in the day, and then I started using Chrome. But today is the day. I have a fresh machine. There is no Chrome on it. I am going to install Firefox. Let's do it. All the same extensions that I use in Chrome are available for Firefox too. So let's support the Mozilla Foundation and use Firefox. It has really good built-in developer tools too. But just as easily, you could do brew cask install google-chrome, and that'll install Google Chrome. Cool. So now we have Firefox. Nice. Let's close Safari. I mean, actually, I'll pull these tabs open in Firefox. Oh yeah, upcoming my VS Code extensions. I'll show that. All right, close Safari. Like that. Okay. Great. So now let's install some extensions. So for AdBlock, I like to use an extension called ublock origin. I guess if we go to it, it'll link to the Firefox install, I think. Yeah, and they have a disclaimer here. Be very careful. There are people that try to emulate ublock origin, and they are not the original. So make sure you're grabbing ublock. This one's totally open source, 13,000 stars on GitHub. We can go to either the Chrome or the Firefox installation. Let's grab it. I like to use an ad blocker mainly because it just makes browsing the web bearable. I don't know. I'm honestly okay if you use an ad blocker. I do have ads enabled on the channel, but if you would prefer to block the ads, that's okay with me. I have a day job. Amal asked, what do I think of Opera? I used that for a while back in the day too. So like, it used to be that there was like Opera and Firefox were really good for development. And then eventually Google Chrome came along and like was the fastest, and they had like Devtools built in and everything, but I haven't used Opera in a very long time. Have they changed anything recently? Fast, secure, easy to use browser. Has a built-in ad blocker, battery saver, and VPN. Interesting. Kind of reminds me of Brave, which is by Brandon Ike, the creator of JavaScript. But this has a built-in ad blocker and various extensions available to it. I'll say I don't hate it. Don't really have any opinions on it. Cool. So we have our ad blocker. I also like to use a thing called Privacy Badger. So you might have heard of an extension called Ghostery. So an ad blocker will block ads. Ghostery and Privacy Badger will block tracking scripts. So they have like a whole database of trackers, and they'll block those because you're pretty much being tracked on the web. So they prevent those scripts from running. Ghostery has a pretty interesting privacy policy. Like, they're basically blocking the trackers, but then they're tracking you themselves. Privacy Badger is definitely the way to go. And it's by the Electronic Frontier Foundation, EFF. Opera is Chrome, less ads. Interesting. Yeah, and so I'm not going to install it on this stream, but I do actually use a VPN service, and I have just like a separate app that I install to use that. Okay, so we have Privacy Badger. I think, do we need to configure it? Yeah, it's configured by default. Cool. OneTab. So this is really cool, especially as a developer. If you always have like hundreds of tabs open, I'll show you how it works. So once you've installed it, let's say, okay, we have all these tabs open. It's the end of the day. I want to like save my progress. Click this button, boom. It puts a link to all of the tabs you had open, and it saves this. So like if I close Firefox, the next time I open Firefox, I can see, and let's also set it as my default browser. Use Firefox, please. But you can create groups of tabs. You just click that one button and it saves all of your tabs. It's really great. And then as you click these, they'll get removed out of your list. Oh, don't want to do that. Cool. So OneTab is great. JSONViewer. So let's say I go to like reddit.com/r/all. There's their 4 W's. Yeah, 3 W's. Okay. If you add .json, that will give you JSON data. Oh my goodness! It's built into Firefox. That's really cool. So typically for Chrome, I use an extension called JSONViewer, and it automatically formats the JSON. But this is great. I had no idea that Firefox had this built in. This is fantastic. So it detected that I requested JSON, and actually gave me a nice viewer where I can look at each thing and kind of like dial down, and I'm not just presented with a big block of text. That's great. I'm just going to keep this. There's no need to install JSONViewer. The other thing is custom styles. So there is an extension out there called Stylus. Is that what it's called? Stylus. Yes. And this lets you install custom themes for websites. Does it not exist anymore? What? I guess it doesn't exist. But I was gonna say, I use Stylus anyway. So like Stylus were found out to like be tracking all of your data. Maybe that's why they don't exist anymore. But Stylus is an open source alternative that it's totally open and they don't track you. So let's install this, and then I'll show you some of the styles that I use. So if you go to userstyles.org, you can search for various websites. For instance, GitHub dark. You've probably seen when I use GitHub, it's dark. It's because I have this theme installed. So now that I have Stylus, if I install this style, when I go to GitHub, it's dark. Cool. And so they have all kinds of themes for various websites. Like I like to install Wikipedia dark. Dark Wikipedia install. Yes. There's also MDN dark. I like dark themes. They have other various themes too. You can see the updated date. Let's install that one. There's also a Stack Overflow dark. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, so Alka in the chat is mentioning that Stylus was actually removed. I didn't realize that they got removed from the store because I had them installed, and then when I had read about how they were tracking your data, I uninstalled them and used Stylus instead. But I thought they were still around. But yeah, I'm glad they're not around anymore. Kamer is asking what kind of MacBook did I purchase. It's the same MacBook, so I actually have a, I think it's mid 2015. Yeah, mid 2015 MacBook Pro Retina. I've had this thing for a little over 2 years now, but I wiped it clean. So I downloaded High Sierra, put it on a USB, and then formatted the hard drive and reinstalled the OS. Mainly just so I could start from scratch and so that I could put it on a non-case sensitive file system. But I really like this MacBook Pro. I have worked with students' computers who have like the latest MacBooks with like the touch bar. I don't really like it. I don't like the fact that everything is USB-C and you have to use dongles for everything. I like having a dedicated HDMI and dedicated USBs. So, I don't know. And this computer runs great. It'll probably keep running great for years to come. Andreas asks, am I streaming from work? Maybe. I just realized there could be people watching me that are like near here and then they'll like be waiting for me outside. I don't know. Don't do that, please. Okay, so I haven't looked at like the settings. Let's see. Yeah, so this a 1.5 gigs of video RAM. This was one of the last of the series to have a dedicated graphics card, but this specifically is not a dedicated graphics card. This is integrated graphics with only 1.5 gigs of RAM. It seems to work great for me. It's got 16 gigs of RAM. It's an i7. Alga has 8 gigs of VRAM. So actually, I'll look on my Windows computer real quick because I'm using a Razer Blade, and it's a pretty beefy laptop. System settings, system information. So I've got 16 gigs of RAM on this machine. Let's see. I know I have like the NVIDIA 1060. I've got a quad-core i7. Display, refreshing system information. Oh no, so NVIDIA GeForce 970M that has, I don't know how much NVIDIA RAM, it doesn't say. Cool. Oh, so Alka, do you have a desktop Windows that you built custom? Cool. Okay, so that's great. Install lots of styles that I like. I'm curious, do the Devtools here have custom settings to make them dark? I don't know. And then lastly, Vue Devtools and React Devtools. I write lots of Vue apps and lots of React apps, so these Devtools are great to have. They show you what's currently in state. They let you see the component hierarchy. So make sure to have those add. Cool. Okay, so that's it for web browser. Now we're on to managing Node.js. So for this, I use a thing called Node Version Manager, NVM, by CreationX. And the reason is I don't want to have to, when I install packages with npm, I don't want to have to be super user. I don't want to use sudo when I'm installing like global packages. I know now they actually have this npx command you can use where you don't have to install things globally, but NVM will actually install Node in your home directory, so it doesn't need any custom privileges, and it just lives in your home directory, and you can install multiple versions of Node. So they have a install script here. I could run this. There also is a cask for installing NVM. I think I'm just going to run like the default install just because. So you can copy and paste that. If you're on Windows, there's specifically a like Windows version of this, because this will only work on like Linux-based systems. And I believe it automatically added this to my bash profile. Let's see. Oh, let's go up one. Yes, so it automatically added this so that wait, no, that's bash completion. Oh, so for NVM. Automatically loads NVM. So now that I've installed it, if I type NVM, I get the command. And now I want to install the latest version of Node. So if I type Node, it's not found, but if I do NVM install stable, this will install the latest stable version of Node.js, which is version 10.6. No, it's... Amal says, he read my sticker as free the bugs instead of free debugs. Yeah, it says free debugs. Surprisingly, not a lot of people will come up to me and like ask me to help them debug things. I'm a really good debugger, and I help students debug all the time. But yeah, free debugs. Cool. So that installed Node, and I think you saw earlier in my bash profile, I have a command up at the top that says nvm use stable. So every time I open a new terminal, now it's automatically using the latest stable version of Node, and you'll see it pop up here using Node version 10.6. So now I have Node.js. That easy. I much prefer installing Node this way over Brew install Node, over download. I definitely absolutely don't want to download the Node installer from the Node.js website. Yeah, use NVM. It's great because you can also install multiple versions of Node. So I could do like NVM install version, I don't know, 0.12. I don't know why I'd want to do that, but that'll install like a really old version of Node. And then any point in time, I can switch between version 0.12. So now, if I do node -- version, it's running 0.12. If I open a new tab, it's always using stable. So node -- version here is 10.6. So it's a great way to switch between node versions, and it installs it in your home directory, so it doesn't need any special privileges. It's the way I prefer to work with Node on your system. Cool. Yeah, and Amal is mentioning, and this is what I had read in CreationX, like the NVM CreationX documentation. You can install it with Brew, but they say it's not supported. Yeah, Homebrew installation is not supported. If you have issues with Homebrew installed, use Brew uninstall it, and use the instructions below. So I just did that. Kamer's asking, will I install Apache in PHP 2? I don't plan to, because I don't use those things for what I use in web development, which is pretty much just Node.js. However, I would definitely search Brew for those things, because I'm sure there exists a PHP. I don't know if you'd need to install Apache on a Mac. There's also, is it the XAMP? I typed it wrong, but Apache and Friends. This is a tool that has your typical LAMP stack, Apache, MariaDB, which is like the open source MySQL, PHP, and Perl, all in one like integrated package that you can install. So you might check that out. Oh yeah, and Amal is mentioning NVM RC. So it's possible to put an NVM RC file in a project directory, and then NVM, when you CD into that directory, will automatically switch to a specific version of Node based on the project. So that's pretty sweet. Okay, now let's install VS Code. So let's do brew cask search Visual Studio. Oh, sorry, brew search will also do it. So Visual Studio Code is the one that I want. So I'll do brew cask install Visual Studio Code. You can also do brew cask install Atom, and you'll get the latest version of Atom. I'm really glad I found out about brew cask. It's so much more seamless than like downloading the app, dragging it to the applications folder, and now I have the ability to uninstall it if I need to. It's really great. Okay, so now I have VS Code. Let's launch it. Cool, VS Code in action. And I'll install all of my favorite extensions. And for that, I have a list of all of the extensions here, but it's actually possible to install these extensions from the command line, so I can like automate this. Let's write a quick bash script. I could like pipe this file into like a read line, and for every line run install the extension. Let's write it. I'd have to look it up, but let's say let's say Linux run command for every line in file. So it's using xargs while read in do some command, and it's taking the input from a file. You can also use xargs. If you know you don't have any white space in the input, let's try it. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna create a text file with just like one extension in it, and let's see if it'll do it. So earlier I was talking about NVMRC. It's not automagic. You type NVMUs, it looks at the file. It'll either, I guess, install or use that specific version. VS extensions.txt. I don't know. I'm only using Vim because Amal's in the chat. Like typically I wouldn't. So I'm going to put this one line of text in this file. Cool. So now I have this file that has an extension name in it. And then it's possible to install a VS Code extension from the command line. VS Code install extension. Install. I'm pretty sure it's in here somewhere. Here we go. Code -- install extension ID. So you do this and then the name of the extension ID, which all of these are their IDs. But if I do xargs, so let's try it. Xargs, that command, taken from VS extensions. Seems to work. So let's put the rest of them in there and it's going to run it one at a time. So let's vim that file. DD, I remember that. That'll delete a line. Let's go into insert mode, paste all those things in, quit it. Okay, moment of truth, one extension at a time. Oh, that only runs one. It only runs the one command in there. I think this is more like what we want. So this should be code -- install extension. And then we're taking it in from VS extensions. Cool, so that's going to install all those extensions. Oh, that works too. So Amal just mentioned you could cat the file, which outputs it, pipe that into xargs, and then put the command that you want to run. And I'm also mentioning Wakatime. I've heard of Wakatime. I haven't. Is that a VS Code extension? Or just an app? Oh, it is an extension. VS Code Wakatime. An open source plugin for productivity, metrics, goals, leaderboards, and automatic time tracking. He says it has nice integration with GitHub and graphs to tell you how much time you spend introducing bugs into the world. Yeah, so I'm sure that'll tell you like how long you're using the editor and like which files you're using and things like that. Okay, so we have a bunch of extensions installed. Let's close VS Code and then reopen it, and then we should have all those extensions. So if I bring up show installed extensions, there they all are. Those are my preferred extensions. And then now, let's get my settings. So I actually have another GitHub repo. It's called VS Code Settings. And I have, for one, I have the list of all the plugins that I just installed here, links to them so you can check them out. But I also have my default settings that I like here. And so these are just various things about like autosave, the font size, my tab size, colors, icons to use, things like that. So in VS Code, if you press Command comma, it brings up your settings, which are blank by default. And I can throw my settings in there, click Save, and look at that. It automatically, so because my my settings, weird, I guess I don't have VS icons anymore. And I guess I didn't install this. Material theme icons. Let's install it. Hey, Amy, welcome to the stream. Okay. Maybe later. And so here's one thing I need to fix. For the longest time, I had Command plus as increasing font size, but even before I wipe machine, it stopped working inside of VS Code. I don't know if like a new setting is like overriding it, but I have to work on my what do you call it? My keyboard shortcuts, because I like to be able to Command plus, Command minus to zoom in and zoom out of text, often because I'm presenting or like showing code on stream. Specifically, the extension that allows me to do that is called font size shortcuts, and it automatically adds like Command plus, Command minus for decreasing and increasing font size. But and that's so by default in VS Code, and this is one of the things I didn't like about VS Code when I first installed it. Command plus will zoom the entire UI. I don't want that. I just want to zoom in text. I don't know. I need to work on it. It'll zoom in once, but then it stops working after that. Cool. Okay, so that's it for code setup. I believe let's look at my list. So we installed NVM. I do have a workspace. I called it dev. Let's also install these things globally. So if you ever watch the stream, I use Lite Server for working with just like local static websites, and then also ESLint. So I'm going to install those things globally with npm. Oh, interesting. Amal is mentioning explainshell.com. Let's check it out. Oh yeah, I've used it before. So you put in a command, it'll explain what each thing in that command does. So let's, for instance, let's put in the command that Amal mentioned in the chat. Cool, so you can hover over each part and it describes like what the command is and then what each thing is doing. That's really cool. Another thing to mention is this thing called tldr. I'm going to install it. You can get it from npm. But tldr stands for too long didn't read, and it's basically like shortened versions and really easy to read of the man pages. So if I do like tldr, well, let me close these, new tab. tldr like ls. It'll update the cache. It only has to do that once. But this will show me like commonly used ls combinations. So ls-1 will list with one line per file. And you can do tldr with like most any command. So tldr cat a single file, cat several files into a target file. So if you're new to terminal and like terminal commands, tldr is great, explain shell is great. Awesome. VS Code settings, VS Code extensions. We're nearing the end. Last thing, my break timer and Flux. So I think I can get Flux from Brew. Brew, search, Flux. So it is there. Is it? I hope it's the Flux that I think it is. Let's try it. Brew, cask, install, Flux. Oh yeah, and let me show you TLD. So Amal's mentioning in the chat. Let me show you TLDR's website. tldr.sh, and it's community contributed too. So if you so like especially tar, like I always forget what are the options for tar, and this will show you like extremely commonly used options for that specific command and in human words what it does. And I believe you can even add you might be able to add to your own local definitions and then also submit definitions online. It's really great. Okay, so that installed Flux. Let's launch it. Okay, so this is an app that automatically makes the screen, removes blue light from the screen when it gets darker outside. I think this is built into the Mac, but I like this one. I don't know. Location. New York City. Go. Confirm. So this, you might actually see my screen get a little bit orange. I'll turn it off for now. So this automatically detects your location, and it knows when the sun, yeah, it's going yellow. Watch it happen. It knows when the sun goes up or goes down. So based on how dark it is outside, it starts to remove blue light from the screen, and it can actually get like extremely yellow. I think, what is like working late? Yeah, you get extremely yellow towards the versus like the daytime. I'll use recommended colors. And then you can set your bedtime too, and the time that you wake up. So I usually wake up like 7-ish, and it has like a reverse alarm clock. So a lot of times if you're staying up late, it will remind you and say, hey, you're waking up in 7 hours. So you should probably go to bed. Yeah, so I love this. I'm going to disable it right now because it looks horrible on stream. You can go disable for an hour or disable until sunrise. I'm going to disable it for an hour because I should be done streaming before then. Good luck installing Flux. August mentioned you can make it red only. Oh, this is super cool. So I've used this on an airplane before. So like it was like I don't know if it was a red-eye flight, but it was like really dark on the plane and everyone was trying to sleep. But if you go to, I think, is it darkroom? Wait, this can get really weird. Wait for it. Yeah. But the cool thing about this is like, especially if you turn your brightness way down, your screen barely has any glare to the people that are around you. And it's cool for like working at night, especially in the dark. And then there's also, I guess movie mode is like probably more vibrant. Let's get rid of that. Cool, but disable for an hour. Cool. Darkroom mode, yeah. Okay, so that's Flux. Last thing is my break timer. Everyone always asks me about my break timer on my stream, especially if you're new to the stream, but let's install it and talk about it. It's called Timeout by Dejal. Here it is. And you can set it up for micro breaks and longer breaks. So I'll install it and show you how I set it up. I searched earlier, this is not on Brew cask, but I might actually create it because casks are just community contributed. So maybe I'll do that. Let's install Timeout. But this is the typical flow of installing an app on the Mac. You download it and then you drag and drop it into applications, and now it's installed. It's not ideal. Oh, other thing I like about Alfred, it has an empty trash shortcut. Boom, trash is emptied. But let's start Timeout. Open. Include a normal break. So I like a normal break to last 5 minutes every hour. And I like my micro break to be 10 seconds. Wait, every 15 minutes. Yeah. And breaks have a lot of options. Timeout can detect when you are not using your computer and treat it as a natural break. So similar to adding, like when we added Hyperswitch and Soectacle, if we give this app accessibility privileges, it'll actually detect if you're not using the computer, and then it won't prompt you to take a break later on. I'm going to enable that. Let's add applications, timeout, cool. Wait, I guess I just did that. Cool. All right. I guess the other thing is you can add as many different types of breaks, I believe. Maybe that's only a pro paid feature. But then also for appearance, you can set these to be different things. So like for my micro break, you could do Jiffy puppies. Let's see if this works. Preview. Yeah, so when you take a break, it'll show like GIFs of puppies instead of like random GIFs. You can also set the opacity. I'm going to go back to just the icon. Preview it. Yeah, so if you've ever watched on stream, this thing pops up. You actually see it like, I had the paid version on my old machine. So the icon I chose was the legacy one, which is like the meditating person. But you have to support them to use this. I think it just disables. Yeah, I like this one. Oh, no way. Alka is mentioning he had darkroom on whenever I had darkroom on, so it made my screen look correct, because like it inverted an inversion. Wow. And he says you can also connect Flux to smart lights. That'd be super interesting. So like when the lights go out in your house, turn on Flux. Cool. Yeah, so that's my break timer, and then that just stays running in the background, and then every now and then it will ask me to take a break. I believe that's it. That's all of the setup. We installed lots of things. That was super fun. Any last questions or comments about setup, the things that I've installed? I will absolutely, like right now, I usually have an app that lets me control my streaming computer from this computer, but I haven't installed that. So after the stream, I'm going to put all of these links in the description. So later on, if you're watching this, you can see all these things and click on them and install them and such. Well, that's pretty much it. We've done it. We've set up my development machine. I guess, like, why not? Let's create like a basic website, because now we have development, but let me know if you have any questions. So one thing is, and I highly encourage, especially if you're new to development, to do this, create a directory in your home directory where all of your projects go. Don't put things on your desktop. Put it in one place that's like, I mean, maybe you could put it in a folder on your desktop, but even that I don't like. You may notice, like, I keep my desktop completely and totally clean. I have nothing on my desktop. But in my home directory, I have this directory called dev, and that's where I put all of my code. You could also make a directory called workspace and put your code in there. You could make a directory called projects, but I highly recommend create a directory and put your stuff in there. So I have a directory. I'm going to make a new directory for the current project. Let's call it my first website. Let's go into that directory, create a file, and then open this directory in code. Okay, do it now for Windows. I actually want to. I want to do a few videos where I'm coding on Windows, because I know a lot of people don't have Macs. I think it's one of the things about Macs is that they're very expensive, and Windows machines are a lot more accessible. So I would like to make some videos where actually I'm coding on Windows, so you can see the tools that I would use there. Cool, well, let's make a website. Ooh, that's not very nice. Do I have? There we go, okay. My first website. We'll add some styles, we'll add some JavaScripts. Let's do like a main, like an H1. Hello world, paragraph. This computer is now set up for development. Yay. And then earlier you saw me install Lite Server. This is what it's used for. So if I start up a Lite Server, it starts up an auto-refreshing server in that directory. So that's great. Let's also add some styles. Main.css, I think, is what it brought in by default. So let's say like body has a font family of sans serif. Font size is like 2 ems. Margin, 2 ems on top. Auto on the right. 0 on the bottom. Auto on the left. And width 80%. Nice. Hello world. This computer is now set up for development. Cool. And one thing I'll show though is, so earlier you saw me install that command called vcprompt. So if I initialize this as a Git repo, watch what happens. Boom. So now it tells me that in this directory, I'm in a Git repo and I'm on branch master. So that's a convenient thing, because if I cd out of it, that disappears. So I know that I'm not in a Git repo. Yeah, let's add some JavaScripts. New file, main.js. Both these things were automatically linked here. Oh, this is one thing. Command-controlled arrow is usually what I use to move things around. And it's not working. So I gotta figure out my keyboard shortcuts. I'll probably update my VS Code settings to include keyboard shortcuts and put that on my GitHub repo. But what should we do in the main.js? We could show an alert. We could move things around the page. I don't know. Oh, good call, Amal. Amal is mentioning setting up git config to trick out your Git experience. That is one last thing that I definitely need to do. So if you saw my my .files repo, I have a bash profile in there, but I also have my default git config, and you absolutely want to set this up. So when you look at my commits on GitHub, it has my face and it has my name, but that's because of my git config, which says what my email is and what my name is. And so by default, when I make commits, it uses this information. So when I push up to GitHub, it actually has my info. So I definitely want to recreate this git config in my home directory. Git config. Throw that in there. For whatever reason, do that. And now, when I make commits, it's going to be as my specific user information. Okay. Kamer mentioned setting up Dropbox. I actually have a lot of personal files in my Dropbox, so I'm not going to set that up here, but that's one thing that I really like to use. I use it to sync my notes, so I have lots of like just random notes, and I put them in Dropbox, and they're synced on every machine that I go in. It's pretty easy to set up on the Mac. Oh yeah, a default git ignore is always great. So a lot of my students will accidentally commit their node modules every now and then. But if you do this, so in your home directory, if you create a git ignore file, these things will automatically be ignored in any subdirectory. So as long as you're putting everything like in your workspace folder, because these things are in this file, this will always git ignore node modules and this weird dsstore file that's on the Mac by default. So if you accidentally forget to create a git ignore, this will keep you safe and won't actually install, won't commit your node modules. And yeah, I think that's it. Thanks for mentioning that, Amal. That was really good. Gamal is asking, do I use git templates? I actually don't know what that is. Let's look it up. Oh. Git template has your back. Give it a try. Git template is a replacement for the default directory that gets copied each time you create or clone a Git repository. That's right. Every time you create or clone a Git repository, some files get copied in your Git directory. Interesting. Yeah, I never used it. Looks cool. Okay. One last bit of JavaScript though. Alert. I'm a web dev. Okay. It should auto refresh. Oh, I killed it. That's why. Dev, my first website, Lite Server. I'm a web dev. Cool. Okay, so that's been it for setup. Like I said, I'm going to put all these links in the description so you can click them, you can install them. I keep thinking of things. Maybe I'll do a separate video, but it's to install MongoDB or Postgres on a Mac. It's as easy as brew install MongoDB or brew install Postgres. And if you run these commands, all of my other videos where I'm using either a Postgres database or a Mongo database, that will actually work. I guess I'll just do it because it's pretty quick. That will automatically set it up and it's ready to go on your machine. Thanks for tuning in, Amal. See you next time. And Alka says, baby's first website. Peace. Cool. And then brew services start Postgres. That should start it up. And then now I can drop into pSQL. Well, I'd have to create DB by default, but now I can drop into pSQL and I'm in a database. I have Postgres on my machine. Great. We do the same thing for MongoDB. I guess it was easy enough. We can just do it in 2 commands. Appreciate that, Alicia. Thanks for tuning in. Yeah, like I said, I think eventually I want to do this on a Windows machine as well to talk about how I might do development there. I am really accustomed to the Mac though and used to it, but ooh, Amal mentions is use Docker and bind those services per project. That's definitely another way to do it. So like you can create a Docker container that has like a Postgres database inside of it or a MongoDB inside of it, and then spin it up specifically for a project. It actually makes it really easy for other developers to collaborate on that project too. But this is installing it globally. Brew services start MongoDB. Now I have a Mongo shell. Exit. Quit. Cool. I'm going to do brew services stop MongoDB and brew services stop Postgres. But I keep saying I'm going to leave and I haven't left yet. Services stop Postgres. Cool. So those databases are installed, but they're just stopped. But we could use them if we wanted to. Okay, that's gone. Let's close that. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Like I said, I'll put the links in the description. And this has been fun. And apparently I'm going to start using FireFox now, so that'll be a fun time. Typically I use Chrome. But all right, wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night. And I'll see you next time. Tomorrow will probably be Code Kata stream. Code Kata stream tomorrow. See you there.